Okay. I call today is Tuesday, October 15th. It's 5 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Tipp City Exempted Village School to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, Mr. Stevens, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Mrs. Drum.
Here.
Mr. Maines.
Here.
Mrs. Dillard.
Here.
Mrs. McMurray.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
All present and accounted for. We have a quorum and can continue this meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. All right, at this time, I would love a motion for the approval of the agenda.
All motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Thompson.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. McMurray. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote.
Thompson.
Yes.
McMurray.
Yes.
Drum.
Yes.
Dillard.
Yes.
Maines.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes for the approval of the agenda. So our first discussion item is going to be work sessions. Okay. So I had this put on the agenda for a couple of reasons. Me and Mr. Moran were discussing moving forward some ideas on work sessions. So I figured I'd get your guys' opinion too, since we're in a work session. So did you want to go first?
Yeah, so I've reviewed kind of how we've done things since the past 15 months since I've been the superintendent, and how we've done work sessions have really, maybe not been as productive, or just another meeting that we've had in the month, and wanted to see if we could streamline things, make things better for everyone. So the idea was, do we need to have them? The last couple months, in September, right after Labor Day, there really wasn't anything else going on. Canceled that one. Again, there's not really a whole lot going on that can't be handled in the regular meetings. So again, how do we want to move forward with the board meetings, with the work sessions? Communication issues, again, making sure that I'm communicating and that we have time to think on things. So again, making sure that I bring stuff to everybody ahead of time so they can think things through and ask questions, get responses back. One of the things that's on our agenda tonight is the insurance for part-time staff. If you recall, this was addressed, I think, back in August. Mm-hmm. Now, again, it was an idea. Now we're going to come back to talk about it today in the work session, but it could have been on the regular session, and then we would look to input something to a vote after we've had some time to discuss, and that's kind of the process that we want to make sure we're doing. So, in other people's minds, what do you see as the reasons that work sessions might be needed? And Amber, Rick, since you've been on here the longest, maybe we'll defer to you first, and then we'll go around the table.
I think that you're exactly correct. Most of the things that we have on it's like a duplication of effort when we have the work session and then later cover the same topic in the regular board meeting where we do all the voting. So in my opinion, unless there's some special emergency situation that requires, a meeting to come up, and I think you're right. I mean, I would not do work sessions in the future. When I was on the board the first time, we only had one meeting a month. So I'm not sure how long it's been that they started doing the separate work sessions. But to me, it seems such a duplication of effort that, I agree.
So my thought was, I didn't want to completely get rid of work sessions for a couple of reasons. First, I'm excited that it actually is a work session now and not a meeting to work through. So if you go back to previous meetings, it tended to always be another meeting because we didn't get things done at our other meeting. So we'd have like a 5-hour meeting and then another 2-hour meeting and then another 5-hour meeting. So I am excited that it is focused on specific needs. My only concern about getting rid of the work session is that sometimes there's things that I feel like need to be talked through that I know people are coming to you for, but if we all have a lot of the same questions, it's kind of nice to kind of work through the situation together. And maybe no one else feels that way, and that is totally fine. My feelings will not be hurt either direction. I just thought bringing it up and having a work through discussion on it would be very helpful. And I had more notes as to what I was kind of thinking on that too, but
So time to collaborate.
Yeah.
Something that you were.
yeah. And then also too, if there's something that we have a discussion that's huge during the actual meeting, it's nice to have a work session to come back to and focus on it again so that we can actually discuss it more or find out more information before we make just a knee-jerk decision vote on things, was my other thought for keeping work sessions. I do love the idea of doing them previous to our meeting, so that way it kind of flows if there's something that needs to be taken care of right away. Those are my thoughts.
Who'd like to go first, next, I should say?
I agree. I think that the work session should only be, I don't think we should get rid of them. I think that we may need them on occasion. For example, the cell phone policy that we're going to talk about tonight, when there's going to be a new policy that needs to be put in place, or we need to discuss something that's related to curriculum or something like that. I think that there can be a need for it, especially if our regular meeting has a lot on the agenda already, just so that we can streamline it, so that we can have time for discussion. But I don't see a need to have a meeting just to have a meeting.
I agree.
My feelings would be, I like the way once a month works with the work session prior to, but my recommendation would be a work session as needed. So similar, maybe a hybrid of what we've been recommending, not doing away with them in principle, but in essence saying, do we need a work session prior to next month's meeting? And if the decision is, yes, there's too much to talk through on the agenda, then we add it. But I would think standard practice would just be to have the meeting as the scheduled item. And then there's a decision made at some point 2 or 3 weeks prior, or whatever the case might be, however much time we need to determine that. Do we need a work session prior to that meeting?
Yeah.
That's what feels right to me.
I love going last, so I'm gonna ditto everything that you all said. I know that we don't get a chance as a board to have discussions. All of ours is, through Mr. Moran, or, one-on-one through Amber, asking questions, to Dave or Mr. Moran. So I think it would be nice if there is something that is on the agenda that would need to be further discussed, that we have that work session. So I'm kind of I appreciate those opportunities, especially things like big things that are going to impact the entire district, the community potentially. So I appreciate those opportunities. I agree with Kyle. I would like to see it maybe as needed, but I definitely agree, Amber, with you, that hour before the meeting. This is really, really nice. That flow, I like this, so.
Yeah, and I was just thinking too, as we're moving into like a lot of facility stuff that's going to be happening in the next couple of years, I could be wrong, but I feel like there might be times when those sessions will be needed to discuss something that's coming at us. So
Absolutely.
that's a quick thing. So that's why I wanted to discuss it.
But are we all in agreement though, as a standard, it wouldn't be a separate night. If we're going to do them, it would be prior to our regular meetings. Does that seem like we're all
I think we're
on
all
that
on.
page?
Yeah,
I think so,
I think
too.
we're all on board
Feels
on that.
good to me too, so.
I think the other thing too, which kind of goes along with what everybody's saying and what you're saying, that maybe at the end of our regular meeting agenda, one of the last things we can do is ask, do we need to have a board meeting or a work session coming up based on what we've discussed tonight? So, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with doing maybe a couple of months to get some of this new facilities things, like this very beginning stuff, through to fruition. I don't know how, we may have to talk about cell phone policy another time. So I'm okay with doing maybe a work session in November and December, and then maybe evaluating in January where we go from there, kind of finding a happy medium.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we at least want to change our work session dates to another, to coincide with our regular meeting before. And then we would just make that
Yeah,
decision.
when we
but
kind of go over the agenda.
what's- Yeah,
Or what's coming up.
what's needed, we'll get some input on, at the end of meetings as well for the following month. But what's coming up, and do we need to have that? If we don't, well, we just cancel the 5 o'clock and we still have the 6 o'clock.
That sounds good.
But if we need to, we need to. And I still think at times if things come up, especially maybe with the facilities, if we need to have a special meeting,
Yes.
then we have a
Right.
special.
Yes.
meeting. This doesn't prevent us from having a special
No,
meeting to
no.
address
Right.
anything, so, and, hopefully that doesn't happen
Yeah.
too often.
No, I hope not.
I have to make sure that
I hope not.
our things are, my communication to everybody
Yeah.
is clear, so you're up to date on everything.
Well, we've had one of those this year. We had to meet at 7 in the morning back in July.
Yeah,
To approve a
for some
couple of
hiring,
things.
I think.
It
Yeah,
wasn't that
that's
big of a
that's
deal,
been a
but-
big change too, so thanks
Yeah.
guys, appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it just all feels sort of natural
Yeah.
and easygoing about it. It doesn't seem like we need to overcomplicate it.
Okay, so we may want to look to the agenda, the regular agenda, to make a motion then to change
Okay.
the work session if everybody says, let's start, if you want to start this for November.
Okay.
And you said, I think typically we haven't had work sessions in November.
Yeah, like November
Or
and December,
December,
we
yeah.
tend to like kind of pull off of them because there's not a lot that's typically happening in the district then.
Well, there is a lot in the district already going on with
Yes,
November and December, so many student events and.
yes, between choir concerts and sporting events and activities and things for all the kids, K to 12. So, but that was because we typically had 2 meetings. We'd still have our regular meeting, but we would get rid of the work session.
Yeah.
So with adding this on the front end, we can still kind of do the
Okay.
same thing and not have those extra meeting dates.
So if we want to add a motion, we have to amend the agenda.
Yeah, well, we haven't even got to that yet.
No, I'm talking, not now, but it went at the regular,
Yeah,
at 6 o'clock.
We can just add it to new business.
Yeah, we still have to amend the agenda though.
Well, it'd be a discussion item under approval of agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can do it then.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The other, what other questions with work sessions, are we okay to move forward?
Yeah.
Okay, so with the insurance, what's that?
I said, thanks.
With the insurance for part-time staff, again, we talked about, insurance is a large cost for the district, and looking at changing the requirement for future staff and grandfathering the people in now to protect the district exposure to future cost. I don't know, I think this is reasonable to look at putting a cap out there. You see what other districts have done that are in our conference, in the MDL. And it's just a matter of, is this something that the board thinks is reasonable, that you have to work 30 hours in order to, qualify for the insurance piece? So that, I put this out, I think, end of August to everybody, just a
Yeah.
reminder, but what thoughts do people have on that expectation?
Well, according to those in our conference, it looks as if most of them offer insurance for part-time employees. Is that,
There's some stair stepping on there in different
Yeah.
rates. Everybody has a little different. If you're, at one school district, it's 22 hours is considered
Right.
full time, or 20 hours is
Yeah.
full time. So, and then the others are not, or they stair step it down with contribution to
right?
that. So,
Which is how we are. We're a stair step.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. The less hours you work in a week, the higher your percentage that you would
Correct.
pay for the benefits.
Correct.
Okay. And then did we find out how many people would fall kind of under this? Did
No,
we?
because nobody,
Got it, okay.
it's grandfathered in, so nobody that's currently
Would fall.
would fall under.
Okay,
it. This is only
yeah,
for
my bad,
future
sorry.
employees.
Sorry.
Yes.
I like the idea of offering something for part-time employees. And I do like the idea that, I think it makes sense that less than 30 hours would qualify as part-time. That's pretty standard from what I've seen around. Some places are 32, some places are 28, but right around that 30-hour mark seems to be like that line of
magic number.
delineation. So I like the idea for our sake and to keep our district competitive and to attract talent and retain positions that might typically see high turnover, to incentivize them with some sort of insurance plan. But I like the idea that the brunt of the cost is on that employee, because again, that's another maybe more powerful incentive. Hey, I like being in this district, I would like to go more full-time. My benefits would then be enhanced because less of the financial burden would be on me for my insurance and whatnot. So I like something that sort of sits in that range of like, hey, yeah, we have this part-time position available. It's great, there's benefits available to you. You have to pay for 80% of it, but you'll still have something. And it's a nice perk to actually having this position, maybe working hard, trying to make it a full-time position for yourself, whatever the case may be. I just like any incentive we have to remain competitive, and anything that we can offer that would attract people to be a part of our district, high-quality workers, even if it's on a part-time basis. So I don't know if 80-20 is the right thing in my brain. I think I'd want to like chew on it a little bit more. It doesn't seem like that's,
80s for the district, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is currently.
Yeah.
Well,
80 is
You're
for the
full-time,
district that
full-time
are-
staff
Full-time,
The
but
or
staff
32
member
hours
covered.
and up, 80% of the premium is covered by the district and 20% is covered by the employee for the teachers. On the non-teaching side, they're 81.5 versus 18.5. So we
that's
cover a
for-
little
that's
bit
for
more.
full-time.
That is for full-time staff, that's correct.
So they do anything for part-time in those.
There is, we stair step down to 3 hours. So that would be 15 hours a week. So between 15 hours and 32 hours, maybe it's 30 hours, I can't remember. But we have a prorated amount, and the less time you work, the more your portion of that premium it costs you.
Okay.
Yeah, but we used to go even lower, down to I think even 1 hour a day, and that was eliminated. So they took it to the lowest you could work was 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week, to be counted as a part-time staff that qualifies for insurance benefits.
Does our health insurance company have any minimum standards?
No, it's what
So it's totally up.
it's up to us. That is correct,
Okay.
because in the end the premium is our responsibility per plan, per employee and what plan they choose.
Okay.
Really nice to streamline this.
Yeah, I was
You
gonna say
know,
that.
this many hours, this is what it is. You know, that's what a lot of these,
Yeah, I mean, Mad River's the only one that kind of has
Yeah.
a stair-step system.
so just for my knowledge, to make sure that I understand, if a part-time employee who would be hired,
Bus drivers are part-time,
Correct.
food service are part-time.
right?
We have some classroom aides that might be part-time. We have people that have picked up bus driving jobs and aide jobs, and they're working a full day.
Okay.
And they're counted as full-time.
Full-time, okay,
So there's an idea of trying to have staff members that are currently part-time pick up other positions to make them full-time, and then they wouldn't have to have the prorated.
and if you are a bus driver and you're driving 2 full routes, morning, maybe morning, afternoon,
Yep.
whatnot, about how many hours?
About 2, which is a lunch
No.
duty.
It's
Five.
5.
Oh.
5 total.
5 per day?
Yeah, between
The
5
morning,
to
the
6.
afternoon,
Yeah.
You're running both AM, PM, or your
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 5 per
secondary.
day.
Yep, and then they're left with, some of them, so right now, they're all receiving 5 hours a day minimum. And then we do have some that work a little more, but so for a lot of them, they still have this 3 hour gap that they're trying to fill. And we have done that with some cafeteria positions and classroom aide positions, so.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that grandfathering in new hires that are working less than 28 or 30 hours seems reasonable, especially if they're going to be on this scaffolded payment anyway, correct?
Mhm, that's what we currently do, yeah.
So I personally have not ever worked in a district where part-time employees are offered benefits. So, but it's a nice thing. I was surprised that so many districts do. It seems that maybe like Vandalia and West Carrollton and Xenia are all about the same. They're right around 20 hours per week. So that would be 4 to 5 hours a day if you were working. I don't know how it averages in when you're off, like for a holiday or,
We wouldn't look at that,
okay.
yeah.
I do know that outside of education, just to give perspective, office administrator in my previous role, 30 hours was the minimum for any kind of benefits. And we just hired an office administrator, and we gave her the choice of either part-time 30 hours, and it was a different cost, or 40 hours full-time, and then she would have full access to the benefits package, and she chose full-time.
Yeah.
So I know that and we did a lot of research. She came from Nationwide Children's, and so 30 hours is also part-time for them. So I'm just saying, outside of just thinking about
The
that.
30 hours is set by the feds. That's their,
Yeah.
that's where that 30 came from. They set it. So anybody that works 30 hours or more, you have to offer them
Correct.
insurance. And if you don't, that kind of goes against you.
Correct.
Depending on how many of those staff you
Yeah.
do not offer it to, but we
Right.
offer it to everybody over that
Yeah.
and to part-time as well.
I think my feeling is, if our bus drivers are critical to this district, and they are amazing men and women, if they're putting in 25 hours, a week, I think that we owe them an opportunity to, to me, I guess, a respect factor. Like if that's gonna help them show up, drive that bus, take care of our kids to and from, and be there and stay here in the district, I feel like that 25 hours needs to be maybe that threshold for them. Does that make sense? I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking typically they can, well, I don't know if everybody does, but usually they'll pick up like a bus trip, to take the kids to get their 30 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whether it's a soccer game or whatever, or field trips during the day, things like that. So I think most of the time that's probably how they hit their 30 hours. Am I incorrect in my assumption?
Some of them do
Okay.
hit that, but it's not as many as.
Yeah,
Okay.
the 30 hours to do it, that's regular schedule.
Okay,
It's not
so it
picking
doesn't
up extra
count.
trips.
Okay.
Trips do
Okay.
not pick up
Okay.
that, that's
my-
extra
okay.
stuff that doesn't count towards.
What about like our paraprofessionals or I don't know if there's any classroom tutors or the lunchroom workers? How many
Absolutely.
hours do they average a week? Lunchroom
We have
workers?
some working 2 hours a day for 10 hours a week. Some of them do 3 hours a day for 15. It's between 2 and 3. Kim, what would you say is the?
2, 3, 4, 6, and 8.
Okay, so 6 will get you full-time status. So we have our 2 and 3, and then the 4
But
would just be 20.
aides are 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Classroom aides are
Because they're in
7 or
the
8 hours.
building
So
all day.
they're already making 30
They would,
hours,
yeah.
yeah.
And I don't want to negate our cafeteria workers and any of our other support staff either. I think they're all super duper important. So I will say, from working with Jobs Ohio for the last 3 months and trying to find people to fill roles, that benefit package is really important. So
But those are for full-time jobs too.
full and part-time,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like you
So-
said, with your situation, if they work
Right.
30 hours, they weren't gonna get those benefits.
Correct.
They wanted it full-time, that's how
Correct.
And I think right now, I think that's where
Yeah.
we have to determine where the resources go. If we
Yeah.
need, if we're, as we hire new people in, again, this doesn't affect anybody
That's
that's
currently
currently hired.
Got it.
It's moving forward. How do we make sure we're managing our resources in a
Correct.
respectful,
Absolutely.
responsible way? Because, whether it's, a family plan for insurance is $25,000.
Couldn't we just define bus drivers and cafeteria workers as full-time, even though they are 25, but,
You could,
I mean, just,
do you determine, the board has the ability to determine whatever it is full-time
Okay,
means.
okay.
I
I
think
think-
you want to be, that everybody's important. The cafeteria
Right, they are.
workers, the bus drivers, the aides.
I just hate to
the
exclude them
custodians.
because,
Yeah.
At some,
Custodians,
at some
yeah.
point, somebody has, there's
There
a
has to be a line
decision
somewhere.
that's a line that's drawn for
Sounds-
what that is. But
It sounds to me like we still want to have a tiered plan, but maybe we need to look at the reimbursement percentages or the breakdown of the rates on how much we're
great.
still
That'd be
providing.
great,
Yes.
yeah.
And maybe there needs to be a change in that.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're still not providing, I apologize, I don't have that in front of me. I'm not sure what the breakdown is, but, I think it was stepped, but in half-hour increments. Maybe it was by hour increments, I can't recall. But, maybe we just look at what is the percentage that, is it 50-50? Does it less for the board and more for the employee? As the further down we get to the 3 hour, maybe we keep it at the 3 hour is the most you have to work to be able, is the least amount you have to work to still be qualified for insurance benefits. But we just have to maybe look at those rates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right.
Because,
Great.
from what I'm hearing, it sounds to me that nobody wants to take anything away
No.
right.
from our part-time people. We want to be competitive.
Well, again, we're not taking anything away
Right,
from
right. Well-
anybody. I don't
Well,
want to.
planning
for
moving
new staff,
forward.
yes.
For new staff.
For new
Thank
staff,
you.
yeah.
Because right now, there is no financial implication to the district if, because we're not hiring anybody.
Right.
Right.
But there could be in the future, so.
Do we also take into consideration whether it's family plan or single plan?
No, it's still the same percentages.
Okay.
It's just a different dollar amount based
Yeah,
on
for the
what
premium.
what
Yeah.
it is. so.
You can't offer changes based on their
Okay.
family status or non-family status.
To me, this doesn't limit who might apply for these jobs, but it opens up a new category. And that some people may find it advantageous to get the job based strictly on the fact that we offer benefits. And maybe their salary is just enough to pay and cover those benefits, but that might be worth it to them in various scenarios. So that's almost a category that's opening up that otherwise you wouldn't have if you didn't do something like this. So again, it's sort of a broader net, I think, to attract talent.
I'm thinking of my mom when she retired as a nurse before she qualified for insurance at 66. She went to work part-time at the CTC for 6 years to fill that gap. So, there are wonderfully talented men and women who that might be.
Yeah, I would felt right into that bubble. Yeah.
Well, we can come up with some ideas and
Okay.
kind of some financial implications
Okay.
for things to share with the board.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
The data helps, Dave. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, next is cell phone policy. Oh, the cell phone policy.
So I know we had three board members attend, at least three attend some meetings, and probably heard it from others. We had 4 meetings for community, we had a few for staff, and had meetings with middle school and high school students as well. I would say, and actually, a girl stopped me at the middle school in the library today and asked me what's happening with the policy since we met, and I kind of told her that we're going to be talking about it tonight, actually. So I think everybody recognizes the detriments to the educational environment, and that included students. There was a lot of discussion, even within students. Some kids were, I'd say, well, let us have it during lunchtime, and then other ones like, no, don't have it during lunchtime, because that's when the problems happen or whatever. They had different views on where to draw a line, but I think everybody was understanding the impact that it does have on them. I think that was pretty clear from all the age groups and even the community meetings. The practicality of it is something I think that I would say needs to be managed, being able to have access, because there's a lot going on with kids, right? Whether it's sports programs, whether it's music programs, picks up, drop-offs, all these activities with parents sharing, trying to coordinate all the things that go on with kids' lives, to coordinate those things. So that was probably the biggest question was, to me, is, well, there's a practicality. They need to have some access, some time to have access to. Could be something that, and I mean, when you're in the school building, you see this, how many times are parents bringing stuff in for their kids that they forgot at home, just Chromebook or this outfit or this set of cleats or whatever. So I think there's some practicality of it for that communication between the families. How do we manage that? And that's really the enforcement piece, is where I think is really what needs to come next. But it really, board members that, were at the meetings, what were your thoughts on how the meetings went and the input that you received from the parents, or even when we had a student at one of the meetings for the community had attended on his own? So what were people's thoughts on?
Well, the one that I attended, which we did have one of the high school students there, but I think overall the parents that were there and the community in general, from people that I've talked with personally, and even some of the kid students, I've talked with many of them, knowing what it is. I think everybody's in agreement that the mental health of our students is top priority. And there's no doubt, there have been probably a dozen or so articles in the Dayton paper about different school districts and how they're handling it, and what the detriments of having the cell phones present were versus when we were all kids and we didn't have those same things. But my general opinion from everybody was that, yes, this policy needs to happen. Some of the things that come to my mind are, well, one young guy didn't like the idea of, he was okay with it, except for he felt that, there should be allowed to have them at lunchtime. And I can kind of see that too, it doesn't hurt during lunchtime, but I think whatever the majority of our community thinks is extremely important on this. I think the other thing that comes to mind is enforcement. Do we use those bags? I can't even remember what they're called, but they're expensive. And from what I read in the Dayton school system, they didn't work because the kids took them, tore them up, and they got to them anyways. So I think we need to decide where we're going to store the cell phones. In the lockers, in the principal's office, how we do that, what's going to be the best way, and still so that the parents can have access to the information, which I think the teachers responding to the principal and so forth, if there's issues come up that the child needs to have addressed, that can be handled properly. And I think the other thing that we need to come to some kind of conclusion, reasonable conclusion, is if they do not abide by the policy, what's the consequence? And I'm thinking that, I know there are several districts that already have their policies in place, and as we get into this, I'd like to see, if we had those in front of us so that we could look at them and see what we feel is best for our kids and our teachers. That's my thinking. It was a good meeting. I was happy to see the amount of agreement that the parents and the students had. So it's a really good thing. So.
I've asked teachers, friends of mine in multiple districts, you know, how's it going for those that are implementing it? I know that there are school districts that have even taken them away from the buses because they become an issue and a safety issue on the bus. So they're not even allowed to be out on the buses. I agree with Rick about how to handle the biggest thing I've heard is the handling of enforcement of the cell phones with the consequences. Every friend that I've talked to that has already implemented a policy said that, you know, for the first 4 weeks, I followed our policy and I was doing what I was told to do in the policy, but my colleague next to me in the next room or in the room over across the hall, they weren't doing it. And they were allowing the kids to have the phone. So then they get into my classroom and they're calling me names and, you know, telling me I can't have my phone. And so having everyone be on the same page, and every single district I have reached out to, from Mentor to Gahanna Lincoln to Dark County to Cincinnati, public, private, all over, how they're talking about it. It's that consequences and consistency of dealing with the phone. Overwhelmingly, the districts who have adopted the bags, there's TikTok videos where they can buy magnets to unlock the bags. They've also, for larger districts, when they check them, when they lock them in the morning, it's becoming an issue. They're like wrapping around the door outside to get in to do the magnetic lock. So I think that, you know, we do need, I don't think the bags are going to be the way to go. But I think that there needs to be a better system of keeping that device safe for the students if they're, you know, storing it somewhere. And then the other thing, my third thing I had, I think a step down maybe policy. I would like to see stronger enforcement K through 8 and some letting up in the high school. As I'm going to be honest with you, we want them to learn appropriate cell phone usage skills as they're going off to apprenticeships, internships, and jobs and careers. I'm really struggling in my current position with filling 2,500 jobs right now because they can't stay off their phone for 4 hours segments at a time because they have to be in a sterile environment. And so I think we need to educate and to have some sort of appropriate usage of the cell phones at high school. But I'm going to take a pretty strong stance and say K through 8, there's so much research that I think it is a detriment to our children to have consistent access to them during the day to their educational outcomes.
I attended one of the meetings, and I thought overwhelmingly the parents it wasn't a large number of parents that were there, but the parents that were there were concerned. They weren't really comfortable with the idea of the student not having access to their phone at some point for safety reasons, because, you know, we're in an environment where parents are worried about their children being safe at school with all of the violence that goes on in our country. So I heard that. I also heard that it's important for enforcement to be consistent. And so for me, that meant consistency, not just from teacher to teacher, but also teachers need to model the appropriate use of a cell phone. And that's very important for the modeling piece. There were some concerns about liability of if we have the phones, what happens if the phone gets broken or stolen, you know, if we're going to put them in these bags and that sort of thing. I don't think the bags are a solution either when, I mean, we use clear shoe holders to put the phones in. I also think that we need to have a vision of what we believe is appropriateness, or for our district, a statement about cell phone usage in general, that that cell phone usage is part of daily life, and that when cell phones first came out, they were kind of a novelty. They were kind of like a toy. People played on them. And now we need to look at them as a useful tool, and that they can be used as a tool at certain times, but it's not appropriate to, you know, have your hammer out all the time, right? So, and also in terms of, I was thinking with the PBIS system that's in place, more so at the elementary and middle school, that getting your cell phone out could be incorporated into the reward part of the PBIS.
They do that sometimes in the grades.
So that if they wanted a day where they had it at lunch, that, well, you have to have this many days, you know, of appropriate behaviors or whatever, and then, you know. But overwhelmingly, the research shows that it is a detriment, not just to children, it's a detriment to adults. You know, this constant worrying about being up on things, in the know. So I think that whatever policy we put in place needs to address safety issues, but it also needs to address the reality that cell phones are a part of daily life now. People do not, everyone has a cell phone. It's just part of life, and especially for older kids, from middle school and up. I would imagine that the percentage of students with a mobile phone is pretty high.
I agree with one thing that Angie said, and that is like very strict, kind of hard line, no devices K through 8th. But I will say that with this caveat, I think I've maybe been the most extreme on, I don't even think cell phones should make it on campus when we've had this in the past. But I had an encounter recently actually with an employee of mine whose daughter suffers from diabetes. And she sort of opened my eyes to the very real necessity and the very helpful nature of having access to health monitoring through their digital devices. And to me, that represents a very good reason why a child would have to have a cell phone. There's not very many good reasons. That would be one of them. And there may be 1 to 2 others, in my opinion. But my feeling is that, yes, I think we need to educate. I think kids need to understand the appropriate use. I don't want this to come across cold-hearted, and I trust that hopefully I'll communicate this in a way that is people see as reasonable. I understand as a parent myself, I understand the tendency to want to have access to your child in an emergency scenario. But in a practical sense, that makes no difference. That's an emotional sort of response to what you're wanting in that moment. And we all would have that as a parent. I would want to know my child's okay if there's an emergency scenario. But practically speaking, that could cause more issues than it actually helps resolve. And it is based purely on emotion and not any reasonable or practical reason to have that. Does that make sense? And again, I'm a parent. I would feel the exact same way. I would want to know in that moment, if I heard something was going on, I would want to know in that moment that my kid is okay. But I think there were hundreds of years prior to cell phones being ubiquitous in society in which these types of things were handled. When I was in school, I'm not trying to be the old guy that's, like back in my day, but even when I was in school.
Yeah, I think you're the youngest one, so I think you're all right.
Well, I am old enough to have had experience where I didn't have a cell phone until I was 17. And they weren't even really ubiquitous until I was 17. But prior to that, if a parent needed to know something was going on at school, they called the office or the office called them, or there was some sort of mass communication sent out, phone, whatever the case might be. There's no reason why those things can't still be effective if we have a good system in place in which that's utilized effectively, quickly, the information's good, all of that. So I skew very much to the side, and having read a lot of the data and having listened to dozens of podcasts with mental health experts and people that are in this field, I find very few good reasons why any children of any age, really, in my opinion, should have cell phones at school. I think they cause more problems than they solve. I think the risk-benefit analysis is way higher to the side of risk than it is the benefit. There are those outliers, those certain scenarios in which it does make sense for a child. That's a blessing, and that's an amazing thing now that the employee that I was talking about, she can monitor her daughter's health and her levels,
Yep.
sugar levels, all that from her Apple
on her phone.
Watch, and it's coming from her daughter's cell phone. Now that's amazing, and that's a gift, because there's some very real complications that can happen that you have to react to very quickly in those scenarios. So I think those things are justified reasons for a child having a device. I don't see many more beyond that, and I get it. It's sort of we want to accept the fact that this is just the way that society is now, but we're in an environment that can be a little more highly controlled for the benefit of the child. And I think that, if you're doing surgery and you're trying to remove things that are problematic, sometimes you cut so far into the fat that you catch the flesh, and that can heal back. But sometimes you have to make the hard decision first, and you have to kind of cut deeper than you might have otherwise.
And then you can
go back and correct it. And I tend to skew that way. I tend to skew to a more, I don't like to use the word extreme, but I guess more of a hardline solution to this problem. And then we continue to reassess and evaluate, and where, okay, this is practical or this is not, or whatever, then we can kind of sort of, all right, what's the solution to that? How do we
Right.
add maybe slowly that back in, or this category can be accommodated,
Right.
whatever the case might be. That's just where I stand on it.
Yeah, so I'm similar to you. My biggest things were, and I spent a lot of time talking to people like in the community, like in groups or wherever I was. And so one of the things that I kind of thought about was, what are the administrative concerns moving into this new realm that we need to consider also, as well as staff concerns too? Like, what are the things that they're concerned about as we move into this no cell phone policy? Because the parents may not have a super hard opinion either way, but the kids will. Some, not all, right? Like with anything, it's some, not all. And then one thing that I thought about is, if we are getting, not having the kids have cell phones with them all the time, I had an idea of like, there needs to be maybe an area in the office or somewhere where the kids can go and make those phone calls to parents if they need something, or like some sort of designated environment for the kids. Because if they know they have somewhere to go if they have an issue, I think they'll feel better. And maybe some of that pressure will be taken away, that they're like, oh, I can't ever get what I need. So those were just some of the thoughts that I had. And I agree with everything else you guys said. So
One other thing
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, there are some low investment, high impact controls that
Yeah.
you can invest in. For example, you can tailor your Wi-Fi access to allow certain
Yes.
things and disallow certain things. The problem comes where you don't need Wi-Fi because it's cellular, right? But there's even solutions for that, technological solutions. Because I think when we get into the area where we're going to invest in hundreds of bags, right, or we're going to put all these lockers in, or
Yeah.
you can't. I don't think you can have it both ways, because if you're going to allow kids to have cell phones on the bus, but then they have to check them in when they get on campus, you're creating chaos and
Right.
tons of problems.
well,
that
and
are just
extra
too
work.
much
That's so much extra work for somebody,
Right.
right? Like
Takes away from
someone.
teaching time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if we're going to allow any student at any time at all to have a cell phone, or if kids are going to be allowed to bring them to the campus, we're going to have to look at those lower investment, higher impact solutions that would be more controls from, I guess, maybe the back end, controlling and limiting what they even have access to do on their
Yeah.
phones. I'm not an expert there, but I do know there are things out there that can be implemented. But I think when you get into a situation where like you're trying to control in what place they can have on the bus, but not on campus. Well, on campus, but only in certain areas. And I think you're going to it's either let them have it and control it properly, or don't let them have it at all. They're not allowed on campus. I don't think you can do it
Yeah,
like a
both
hybrid
ways.
approach.
Yeah.
I just have one last thing I forgot to mention. When I did take a soft survey of colleagues around the state, they did say 2 other things popped up. Kids are they're innovative.
Very.
I appreciate it. I want to hire
Very.
them someday. I'm so excited. They went and bought extra phones, and they locked the extra phone in the bag, and then they kept their phone on them. And then the watches. They've seen a soaring of the watches. So now you see this and this and this. And so I just wanted to let you know, are we ever going to solve this 100%? No. But I think if our role here is to offer the best opportunity for our students to learn in a safe environment, free of as many distractions as possible. If our staff, if we want to recruit staff and have them be able to teach in an environment where they're free from distractions and they can use the full amount of time every day without dealing with this issue. If our bus drivers and our any of our support staff, our lunch staff is able to do their jobs without these phones being a distraction or a hindrance. I think it's really important that I agree with Kyle, sometimes, we need to go stronger at the beginning and then evaluate. That's what this is all about, right?
Yeah, it's going to be,
Collecting
I think this would be a reevaluation
and
process.
evaluate.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
So when we went back to this in July, we talked about the model policy, and the model policy talks about really kind of four things. Policy applies to the use of cell phones by students while on school property during school hours. So school hours to me are school starts, school student, ends for students. So this model policy doesn't have to do with the buses right now, the model policy that we looked at. And this is their words, students are prohibited from use of cell phones at all times. There's an exception for monitoring or address a health concern. And it's the students shall keep their cell phones in a secure place. So it kind of puts the responsibility on them to keep it out of the classroom. And then you have discipline. They have six of them, and it's really, they make it a local decision on those things. I would say at one of the meetings, a parent who lives in the district, works in another school district, talked about how they went from trying different things and then eventually trying the bags and then going away from the bags and just going strictly to, hey, it's a Saturday school.
Yeah.
It's not playing around. It's just, this is the policy, it's not, it's done. So I think the discipline and the security of things, the management of it is something that needs to be figured out, but we need to know where the policy,
correct.
where is the policy likely to go, so then we can figure out those next steps. And some of it might have to be with, again, when it might be inappropriate, when is it inappropriate. So if you're looking at it, if you just on your fingers, hey, 5 is I'm totally with the board model policy of no student, no cell phone during school hours, or 1, I'm totally against it. Where would you be at? So take 30 seconds and kind of let me know where you're at, so then I know what to work with on the administrative side. How do we manage this? How do we implement this? Because it can't just be create a policy and then
Right.
it's not set up for success.
This is talking about the model policy specifically, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to answer that in a 1 to 5 for me, because there's a little bit of nuance to it. So
Well, you could be, if you're totally in agreement with it, then you're
you're at
totally in
5.
agreement if you're at 5, right?
Oh, okay.
I want to do it. I want to do that.
I'm with you.
If I say, hey, I really like the model policy, but I want to tweak it just a little bit, then I'm at a 4. If I'm,
Gotcha.
just an idea, because again, this is going to be, I think, it's multiple steps. So, hey, we're going to bring stuff to you, and this is what we think, this is what other schools do. But if it's like, hey, we don't want to touch cell phones because we don't have to, it's a May thing, you have to have a policy that say what the policy is.
Yeah.
We need to know, otherwise it's never going to get to this.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you were
implementation.
asking us.
No, you're
Are we all in
okay.
that numbers?
So, well, I'm in between like a 3 and 4, right? So like, I don't agree with all of the policy, like exactly as it's written. I like some of it, but then I think there's some that we can tweak and make it all work.
And when you say, what does that mean? What is it that you disagree with?
Well, so like taking away the phone completely, like I think there needs to be some sort of system in place for all of that, but not.
So you're talking about, there needs to be a system in place where students can't access it at certain.
Yes, yes. But I love the idea of the harder line, maybe with that K to 6 or K to 7. And then even in that 6, 7, 8 and up, teaching them how to use them appropriately. So like, something like that. So I love a lot of what the policy says. I just think for our district, we may need to move some things around.
And again, this policy is only for school hours, school
Yes.
teaching hours, not extracurricular.
Right.
It's only for school hours.
Right.
Correct.
So if they're
I would
waiting in
say
the
I'm a 4.
cafeteria, like waiting in the cafeteria before school starts, they can use it?
That's
We'd have
because
to
that's the
decide
model policy.
Okay.
The model policy says yes.
Okay,
School hours to me is when school starts, when it ends.
okay.
I would be at a 4. I think the thing is that I see is some of those areas in there need to be more clearly defined.
When you say areas.
In that model policy that you read, for example, not allowed to have them at all during school hours, you know.
Yes.
But the bus is okay, you know.
In this model policy, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we couldn't change it.
Right.
But I want to know where they're going to store those phones safely, you know, and what kind of
Well, the
access.
policy makes it pretty clear that that's the responsibility of the student in their locker or their backpack.
Well, I'd like to
So-
see that defined.
Right.
You know, more.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's
we need to
not-
make a decision.
on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that has to be part of
right.
the determine what's okay, what's not okay. So,
I'm closer to a 4.5 K through 8. Again, I'd like to take a harder stance, K through 8. They're children, their brains biologically and the chemicals inside
Cannot
their
handle.
bodies are not
Right.
able to handle it, K through 8. I'm at a 4 for 9 through 12. I definitely think we need to have the appropriate, when appropriate.
4 for me.
Yeah, I liked Kyle's explanation, the surgery thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that kind of illustrated to me. I'd say I'm a 4.5 too. And maybe not K to 8, maybe K to 7, K to 6. But I still think that it's very important that the younger kids, they don't need a cell phone at all.
okay. Well, I'll talk this over with administration and clarify
Yeah,
some of those things.
I'd love to hear what they're thinking too.
It sounds like we're okay with this policy with a little tweak.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
That's what I'm getting. So we can clarify, and then we can specify the discipline out, so again, it's clear what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then we can bring it back,
Yes.
okay? All right.
Okay. Perfect.
What are your thoughts on the cell phones before we close out, before our regular meeting? Anything? All right, thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, at this time, I would take a motion to adjourn our work session.
I'll move that we adjourn the work session.
Moved by Mrs. Dillard
I'll second.
and second by Mr. Maines. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and proceed to vote.
Dillard?
Yes?
Maines?
Yes.
Drum?
Yes.
McMurray?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, work session is adjourned.
What time is it?
Oh, it is 5:59.
Got a minute, and then we'll start it back up.
Yep.
Stretch while you can.